The kingdom council fears war, my father fears disgrace, but I only fear losing you. They sit around the long, long marble table, their jeweled rings clinking against goblets of wine as they whisper about alliances, betrayals, and the delicate threads that hold kingdoms together. They talk about me as if I'm not there, as if I'm just another pawn in their royal games. To them, I am a prince bound by duty, a symbol of my father's pride, but none of them understand that beneath the gold and the crown, there is a man drowning in love. They fear a war that may tear our lands apart. My father fears that my heart will stain his name in the history books. But me, my fear is far simpler. It's the thought of waking up one morning and realizing that you're gone. I hear their voices, loud and accusing. They call you a distraction, a curse, a temptation that has blinded me from my responsibilities. They call you unworthy of royal blood, as if love ever needed permission from the crown. My father's rage fills the chamber like smoke. He says, I am bringing shame upon our family that kings do not love. They command, they conquer, they control. I look into his eyes, and for the first time I see not power but emptiness. He built his legacy on fear, and now he's afraid of something he cannot control, my heart. He fears disgrace, but I've already accepted it, because loving you is worth every scandal, every rebellion, every consequence. Every night I sit by my window, watching the kingdom's lights flicker like dying stars. Somewhere beyond those mountains lies your land, a place my people call an enemy, but to me it is home because you are there. The council calls it treason that I think of you, that I dream of peace instead of war. They say my affection for you weakens the crown, but I believe it gives me strength, the kind they will never understand. What they call weakness is the only truth I've ever known. If loving you makes me unfit to rule, then let them take my throne, because I would rather lose a kingdom than lose you. My father summoned me to his chamber tonight. His eyes burned like dying embers, his voice heavy with disappointment. A prince must love his people, not a girl from the enemy's blood. He said, I wanted to shout that I do, that loving you is loving my people, because you are proof that peace is possible. But he wouldn't listen. His pride is louder than reason. He fears disgrace more than he fears bloodshed. He fears the whispers of nobles more than the cries of the innocent. He fears love because it's something he cannot rule. And maybe that's why I no longer fear him. The kingdom is on edge now. Rumors of rebellion spread through the courtyards. Soldiers sharpen their blades, and the council prays for a war they claim to dread. My brother watches silently, waiting for the day I fall so he can claim the throne I no longer desire. But in the chaos of their greed and fear, I still think of you. Your voice, your letters, the way you said my name as if it belonged to no one else. They can take everything from me, the crown, the palace, the future I was born into, but they will never take you from my heart. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I imagine us away from all of this. No titles, no crowns, no enemies, just two souls free. I would trade the entire kingdom for one day of peace beside you. The council says love cannot save a nation, but perhaps they are wrong. Perhaps love is the only thing that ever could. If only they could see you the way I do, not as the daughter of a rival king, but as the light that made me see the truth behind all this darkness. If war comes, I will not fight for borders or pride, I will fight for you. And if the kingdom falls because of it, then let it burn, because what good is a crown built upon emptiness? My father can fear disgrace, the council can tremble before war, but I will never fear love. My only fear is losing the one person who made me realize that even a prince is nothing without a heart that truly beats. You, The council chamber was filled with the scent of burning candles and deceit. Every noble's gaze pierced through me like a dagger, their whispers thick with judgment. They spoke in riddles of politics, but their meaning was simple. They wanted me to denounce you, to sever whatever bond still tied me to the rival kingdom. Their words dripped with false loyalty, all of them pretending to protect the throne, when in truth they feared for their own power. I sat there in silence, letting their accusations wash over me like waves against stone. My father watched unmoved, his crown gleaming like a reminder of what I was expected to become, and what I never wanted to be. When they demanded I speak, I stood, every heartbeat echoing in my ears like the sound of war drums. I told them I would not renounce you. A stunned silence followed, then a surge of outrage. My father's hand slammed against the armrest of his throne, his voice like thunder shaking the room. "Do you realize what you've done?" he roared. "You've doomed this kingdom." But I met his fury with calm resolve. "No, father," I said quietly, "I've saved myself." His face turned pale, as though my words were a blade he hadn't expected. For the first time I saw fear in the eyes of the man who ruled without ever trembling. That night, they placed guards outside my door again, though I knew it was useless. A locked door cannot contain a heart that's already escaped. Through the crack in my window, I could see the border lights far in the distance, the faint line that separated your kingdom from mine. I thought of you then, wondered if you were watching the same horizon, praying for me in silence. The thought of you was my only comfort. The kingdom may have turned against me, but your love was still my rebellion, my defiance, my reason to breathe. As the moon climbed higher, I began to plan. I knew I couldn't let the war begin. I couldn't let innocent lives be lost because two kings refused to understand love. I decided I would go to you one last time, not as a prince seeking alliance, but as a man seeking peace. The guards would change shifts before dawn. That would be my only chance. I wrote a letter for my father, though I doubt he will ever read it. In it, I told him that no matter how hard he tries, he cannot rule the human heart. It was my final confession, not of guilt, but of truth. Before dawn, I wrapped myself in a cloak and slipped past the guards as they argued by the gates. The air was cold, biting against my skin, but the thought of seeing you again warmed me from within. Every step toward your kingdom felt like shedding the weight of generations. The expectations, the lineage, the title that had always been a chain around my neck. For the first time, I was free, even if freedom meant running into danger. I didn't care. I just wanted to see you once more, to tell you that even if the world burns, my love for you will not. When I reached the border, I saw your banner fluttering in the wind. The guards from your side spotted me, their weapons drawn, but I raised my hands, shouting your name. Their hesitation told me they knew who I was, the enemy prince. Yet, before they could act, you appeared. You came running through the fog, your cloak trailing behind like a shadow of light. The moment our eyes met, the world stopped. You looked at me as if the night itself had brought me back to life. And in that instant, I knew every risk, every defiance, every scar was worth it, just to see you breathe my name once again. But even as we embraced, the sound of horns echoed across the valley, the call to war. Both kingdoms had already decided our fate. The armies were marching, the sky turning red with fire and dawn. You clung to me whispering, "We're too late." I held you tighter, whispering back, "Then let them come. If this is how the world ends, let it end with us together." Because I would rather face the wrath of kings, the roar of war, and the judgment of heaven itself than live another day without you. The first arrow sliced through the dawn like a scream, and that was how the war began. Trumpets roared across the valley as soldiers from both sides charged, blades flashing beneath the rising sun. I pulled you behind me, my heart splitting between duty and love, between the crown I'd abandoned and the woman I couldn't let go of. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and iron, the cries of men echoing through the hills. It was chaos, a chaos born from fear, pride, and the stubbornness of kings who never learned how to love. And there we stood, two broken hairs in the center of it all, trying to protect what the world refused to understand. You begged me to flee. They'll kill you if they see you with me, you cried, your hands trembling against my chest. But how could I run when you were still here? I'd spent too long running from myself, from the life others chose for me. I cupped your face, the sound of battle thundering around us, and whispered, I won't leave you, not now, not ever. The look in your eyes, that fragile blend of fear and devotion, burned itself into my soul. You wanted to believe me, but even you knew love could not shield us from war. Still, we clung to each other as if it could. When the soldiers from my father's army saw me, they hesitated. Some dropped their weapons, unable to strike their own prince, but others did not falter. He's a traitor, one shouted. He's betrayed the crown for the enemy's daughter! And before I could speak, swords clashed again. Your soldiers moved to protect you, mine to capture me. And in that madness, loyalty blurred into confusion. The earth trembled beneath the weight of clashing destinies. I fought not to win, but to survive, to buy us time, to find a moment's peace amidst the storm. Blood stained the fields like crimson silk. The sound of steel meeting steel drowned out every prayer, every promise. I fought beside men who once swore to die for me, and now they fought to see me dead. But every time I looked at you, your hair tangled with dust and sunlight, your hands trembling as you tried to protect me, I found strength I didn't know I had. We were not supposed to exist, not supposed to love, not supposed to survive, and yet we defied everything, even fate itself, for one more heartbeat together. Then, through the chaos, I saw him, my father, mounted on his black stallion, his armor gleaming like death, his eyes locked on mine, filled with both fury and sorrow. For a moment, everything went silent. I could see the war reflected in his gaze, not just the one before us, but the one within him. He raised his sword, shouting something I couldn't hear over the noise. And then he charged. I felt the ground tremble as his horse closed the distance between us. I wanted to believe he wouldn't strike his own blood, but kings love their thrones more than their sons. Before his blade could reach me, you stepped between us. The world froze. I shouted your name, my voice breaking with terror, but it was too late. The sword meant for me found its mark in you. The sound of steel piercing flesh shattered the battlefield more than any horn or cry could. My father's eyes widened in horror. Realizing what he had done, you fell into my arms, your blood staining my hands, your breath shallow, trembling against my skin. It's all right, you whispered, smiling weakly. At least we stopped the war. I held you as the world fell apart. The soldiers stopped fighting. Even my father dismounted, his sword falling to the ground. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence that followed was the sound of guilt, of realization, of love too late to be saved. You looked at me one last time, your eyes reflecting the dawn, soft, golden, eternal. Don't let them forget us, you whispered, and then your voice faded into the wind. I screamed your name until my throat broke, until the heavens themselves must have heard me. And when the war ended, it wasn't because of peace. It was because the price of love had been paid in full. The battlefield was silent now, a graveyard of shattered armor, fallen banners, and the ghosts of what could have been. The air still carried the scent of smoke and blood, but the war cries had vanished. Only the wind dared to move, brushing against her hair as it lay tangled across my lap. I held her close, refusing to let go, even as her warmth began to fade. The crown that once defined me felt like a curse now, a symbol of everything I had lost. Around me, soldiers from both sides lowered their weapons, their eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in generations, the field between our kingdoms was quiet, because love had silenced it. My father approached slowly, his armor smeared with the blood of his own men, his crown tilted, his face pale as ash. He said my name, softly, almost as if he were afraid of it. There was no anger left in him, no authority, just the hollow echo of regret. When he looked down and saw her lifeless form in my arms, I saw the man behind the king crumble. His sword slipped from his hand, and for a fleeting second, I thought he might weep. I didn't mean, he whispered, but I couldn't bear to hear the rest. His excuses were as meaningless as the titles he'd fought so hard to protect. You killed her, I said, my voice shaking but calm. You killed peace. You killed everything I ever believed in. He tried to touch my shoulder, but I pulled away. I didn't want comfort, not from the man who had destroyed the only light left in my world. I stood, holding her in my arms like something sacred, and began to walk. Every step felt heavier than the last, but I would not let anyone else lay a hand on her. The soldiers parted, bowing their heads, not out of respect for a prince, but for a love they had seen die before their eyes. For the first time, I realized they weren't my enemies. They were as broken as I was, victims of kings and crowns that valued pride over peace. When I reached the hill overlooking the field, I laid her down beneath a tree, the same kind that grew near her palace gardens. I brushed the dirt from her face, my tears falling onto her skin, trying to bring her back to life. You were right, I whispered. Love could have ended the war. My voice cracked as I laughed bitterly. But they never wanted peace, did they? They just wanted control. The sky above us was streaked with red. Dawn or dusk, I couldn't tell anymore. It didn't matter. Time had lost meaning the moment she stopped breathing. My father stood a distance away, watching me, his face torn between pride and pain. Come back to the palace, he said, his voice trembling. Well, honor her. We'll make peace. I turned to him slowly, my heart hollow. You don't get to make peace after killing love, I said. You can build treaties, sign scrolls, and light candles, but nothing you do will undo what you've done. He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already walking away. I had nothing left to say. Not to him, not to anyone. The throne he wanted for me now felt like a coffin, and I was done being buried alive. I wandered for days after that, through forests and ruins, hearing her voice in every breeze. The people whispered of a prince who had lost everything, a ghost who refused to return to his crown. Maybe they were right. I buried my sword beside her grave and swore never to lift it again. My father could have his kingdom, his power, his empty victory. I wanted none of it. All I wanted was her hand in mine, her laughter echoing across the halls one more time. But love had made me a man, loss had made me something else entirely, a shadow of the man she believed I could be. And yet, even now, when the nights grow quiet and the stars hang low, I still see her, in the wind, in the moonlight, in the peace that finally fell upon two kingdoms that had forgotten how to feel. They say love started that war. They're wrong. Love ended it, and though I walk this earth alone, I know she's not gone. She's in every heartbeat that dares to love in a world built on fear. The battlefield was silent now, a graveyard of shattered armor, fallen banners, and the ghosts of what could have been. The air still carried the scent of smoke and blood, but the war cries had vanished. Only the wind dared to move, brushing against her hair as it lay tangled across my lap. I held her close, refusing to let go, even as her warmth began to fade. The crown that once defined me felt like a curse now, a symbol of everything I had lost. Around me, soldiers from both sides lowered their weapons, their eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in generations, the field between our kingdoms was quiet, because love had silenced it. My father approached slowly, his armor smeared with the blood of his own men, his crown tilted, his face pale as ash. He said my name, softly, almost as if he were afraid of it. There was no anger left in him, no authority, just the hollow echo of regret. When he looked down and saw her lifeless form in my arms, I saw the man behind the king crumble. His sword slipped from his hand, and for a fleeting second, I thought he might weep. I didn't mean, he whispered, but I couldn't bear to hear the rest. His excuses were as meaningless as the titles he'd fought so hard to protect. You killed her, I said, my voice shaking but calm. You killed peace. You killed everything I ever believed in. He tried to touch my shoulder, but I pulled away. I didn't want comfort, not from the man who had destroyed the only light left in my world. I stood, holding her in my arms like something sacred, and began to walk. Every step felt heavier than the last, but I would not let anyone else lay a hand on her. The soldiers parted, bowing their heads, not out of respect for a prince, but for a love they had seen die before their eyes. For the first time, I realized they weren't my enemies. They were as broken as I was, victims of kings and crowns that valued pride over peace.